Welcome back, everybody. So a little while back I created a video to show you how to adjust the valves on your air-cooled Volkswagen, and it turned out well, but it was kind of hard to see because it was in the car, and trying to get the camera up inside there, it was kind of dark and everything. So I have the opportunity here. I've got a motor out of the car that we're doing for our 70 bus, and I thought, well, I'll do a new video and it'll be easier for you to see everything. I can give you a little bit more ins and outs and whatnot. So we're going to adjust the valves on this motor. The motor had been rebuilt a few years ago, so I more or less took it apart to clean it up and paint it. I did pop the heads off, change the push rod tube seals and all that just to make sure that was good, retorque the heads, and then painted everything up to make it look pretty because it's a full restoration. So that's the deal with this one, but because I had the heads off, I need to adjust the valves. So first thing you're going to do when you adjust your valves, the understanding the way the motor works is when the individual cylinder, and let's use number 1 as our example, when that reaches top dead center of the firing position, when the spark plug is going to fire, both of your valves are closed. That is where you want to adjust your valves for each cylinder, is when they're closed. For obvious reasons, you don't want them part open because you're not going to get your right gap. So we need to find our top dead center for each cylinder. Now, the distributor itself generally has a notch on it. Hopefully you can see that. And that is pointing to your number 1 cylinder. So when we rotate our engine over, you're going to have notches in the pulleys. Now this is an aftermarket pulley that was on here. It's a little bit different, so I brought a stock pulley down here. Here's what a typical stock pulley looks like. Let's see, where's our notches? So on a stock pulley, you're going to have little notches like this. Now, depending on the year of your car, there may be 1 notch, 2 notches, 3, depending on what's there. Some of the newer ones will even have it not necessarily a notch, but like a dimple in there. So it's all going to depend on your year of the car. Those notches are more or less for timing. They're different degrees. But what they will do for us is they will tell us where top dead center is for the number 1 cylinder. Okay? So generally what I will do is I'll start out, I'll pull the distributor cap off, I'll see where it's pointed, and we'll turn our motor over until we get our rotor, and I'm just going all the way around again, pointing towards that number 1 cylinder. And at that time, we should be at our 0 degree mark. This is going to be 0 degree because this was a pulley that had the timing marks on it. And the way I have this one marked off is 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. Being that this isn't a vacuum advanced distributor, this motor will end up getting timed at about 30, 32 degrees at 3,000 RPM. So that's why I've got the additional marks in there. I'll get it up to 3,000 RPM and then I'll set the timing. Another video. But anyway, so that gets us in the ballpark. Top dead center. Now we want to verify that we are pointing to our number 1 cylinder. If you have a factory stock car, it will be. But these cars have been pulled apart so many times and so many different people working on them, we can't guarantee that somebody didn't change things, get the distributor drive gear in there wrong, whatnot. So here's how we're going to verify that. We got our notch lined up with the case here. That should be, we have our rotor pointing to the number 1 notch. If we put our cap on here, this is our wire. We should be able to follow this wire now. And it's the top one, and it's going to the number 1 cylinder. So I know my setup is correct there. Now another way to verify that we are at top dead center on that particular cylinder is if I move my pulley back and forth. Those valves should not move at all, either of them. Now if you look at the number 2 cylinder here, when I move the pulley, you can see that exhaust valve is moving. So I know I'm not at top dead center for that particular cylinder, okay? So when you believe that you're at top dead center for the particular cylinder you're working on, when you move your pulley and go back and forth here, you should not see your valves move at all. And there should be, well, there's not in this case because it's been taken apart and put back together, but generally you'll feel some play in there unless they're really tight and you were overdue for a valve adjustment. So that is how I'm finding my top dead center. So there's a few ways to find it and double check yourself, okay? With the distributor location, you should be pointing there. You know, there may be times where when you're at top dead center and this rotor is pointing in a different direction and not on the notch, but it still is pointing. Somebody has messed up they put in the distributor drive gear wrong and whatnot. And you can make them run that way, but it's not the simple way that the factory intended it. So, but some people will run into that, so don't get discouraged. And if anyone ever has any questions, you're welcome to comment me or even give me a call and I'll help walk you through it. So once we find top dead center, we're going to start with number 1 cylinder. That's how I do it. I start with number 1. So I've got my top dead center. And we're going to take our 6/1000 feeler gauge. And obviously it's not fitting in there, so we're too tight. So we're going to have to loosen up our lock nuts on these particular 2 valves. And then we can loosen our set screw up a little bit. So now I've got them loose where we got play in there. So we're going to take our 6/1000 feeler gauge and we're going to get that in there and we're going to tighten up our set screw slowly until I've got a very tight drag there till we get a nice light drag. You don't want it too loose, but we can go in there and I can feel it's dragging in there. So that's my 6/1000. So carefully holding that there, we'll take and we'll tighten our lock nut. And then we'll double check it, and that feels good. Sometimes when you tighten the lock nut and all that, this adjuster will move a little bit and it'll be off, and You might have to go through a few iterations, but looks like I did good. So I'm going to make sure this is tight. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to do our intake valve. All right. That. And there's our number 1 cylinder done. So it's as simple as that to adjust the valves. Once you've got it at top dead center and both of your valves are closed, you're just going to take your feeler gauge and you're just going to turn your adjusting screws until you've got the 6/1000ths there. Now to go to the next cylinder, the way I usually do it, and you can do it any way you want, but for me the simple way is I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. And what we'll do is to get to number 2, we're going to rotate the crankshaft 180 degrees counterclockwise. So basically we're spinning the motor over backwards. And if you have a stock pulley, your notches are here. Basically you're going to be turning this so your notches are on the bottom. That'll bring us to our, I'm watching my notch. Now, what I did on this particular pulley to make things easy is I put a notch and a little white mark here at 180 degrees to the top dead center one. So this is bottom dead center for number 1. So you can do that on your stock pulley too to make it easy. You got your notches here, 1, 2, 3, whatever your car has. But then if you want to put a little thing here, or you just kind of watch it go around. But by going backwards, that 180, that will bring us to number 2 cylinder. At the same time, our rotor now should be pointing to the number 2 spark plug wire. And if we trace this one back, it is going to number 2. The other way now we can verify that we are on number 2 is we can take our pulley and our valves ain't moving. And now you can see, if you watch the number 1 here, because we're not on top dead center anymore, you can see that one moving. So we're verifying that we are on top dead center for number 2. So then we'll go through, we'll loosen up our lock nuts. And we'll get our feeler gauge in there. Tight. Now these are way off. Your car will not, or shouldn't be that far off, but I'm off because I had the heads and everything all apart. I may have the rocker arm from that side on this side. The push rod tubes were taken out, so you may have different setup there. So that's why I'm so far off. But in a general maintenance standpoint, you'll only have to move your screws a little bit. Okay, that one feels good. Yeah, see, like that one I didn't even have to hardly turn. Like I said, it could be a different length of push rod tube. It all depends on which one went back where. You know, it doesn't really matter when you take it apart. That's the reason we're adjusting. Let me tighten up our lock nut. Oh, now I'm a little bit loose. I don't like that one, so we're gonna come in here and we're gonna okay. That feels better. There's number 2 done. Now we're going to move on. Like I said, I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to go to number 3. We're going to turn our engine counterclockwise again, 180 degrees. And we'll come back up to our top dead center marks, the same ones that were on the number 1 cylinder. So your main top dead center is going to be your 1 and 3. But you know you're at number 3 because now you're pointing at the number 3 spark plug. And we're going to come over here. We're going to verify that. Take and move our, and neither of our valves are moving. We know we're on number 3. Loosen up our lock nuts. And these are loose on this side. Feels good there. We can tighten that one up. And that feels good. Let's go to our intake valve. That's pretty loose. A little tight. There we go. Tighten up our lock nut. And that feels good. One more to go. Come back. Counterclockwise. Another 180 degrees. See our rotor coming around. Our bottom dead center mark is there. It's our 180 degrees. We should be pointing at number 4. Valves are closed. They're not moving. Let's loosen up our lock nuts. That's pretty loose. See where we're at. Now when you're adjusting your valves, so that I get a light drag, you normally want to err on the side of being loose versus tight, especially on your exhaust valves. And the reason for that is you want that valve to be closed. The longer it's completely closed, it can transfer heat to the cylinder head to help it last a little bit longer. We're a little loose. And when everything expands, you don't ever want that valve to be staying open at all. Oh, now I'm too tight. So you see, this one's going to be a stubborn little guy. There we go. And do the exhaust on this one. Like I said, they shouldn't be that far out of adjustment on a car that's running, but if they are, you've got some issues. There's that. Tighten our lock nut. And that feels good. There's all 4 of our cylinders adjusted. So that's how simple it is. It really is. Obviously this looks a little bit simpler because the motor's out. When you're doing it in the car, you're kind of underneath there but hopefully this gives you a better idea of what you're trying to do without me trying to do it underneath the car and trying to see what I'm doing. But essentially, I'm finding, as a summary of what we did here, is I'm gonna start out, I'll turn my motor over clockwise till I get to top dead center, but I want to be pointing at my number 1 cylinder where our notch is. A lot of your older cars, that notch will be back here, so that can be in a different location. So we're going to keep turning our motor over till we get to number 1, top dead center. And there we are. We verified that we're on number 1. We should have our play. Yep. We know both valves are closed. We'll go on to number 2 by going counterclockwise. We'll rotate the motor backwards 180 degrees. And we'll do number 2, 3, and 4. So that's essentially it. It's pretty simple. So if you've got any questions, definitely comment below. Even give me a call at Old VW's Restoration. Look me up. And I appreciate you watching. If you like this, please like it. Please subscribe. And I'll keep bringing you more. All right? Have fun